Appreciate it.
Senator Gutierrez, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I was putting my email into a phone. I have so much to ask, Chairman. So many questions, so many notes. How much is too much? You asked that
We
earlier.
got 29 days left of a 30-day special session.
Well, we think we got some time.
Yes, sir.
How much is too much? You talked about, I guess, people dying, kids dying, correct?
Correct.
Tools in the toolbox, that's what we heard Chairwoman Huffman say, correct?
Correct.
About 400 yards of buoy, not a whole lot, right? Just another tool in the toolbox, right?
Tool in the toolbox.
But that tool in the toolbox, what this governor did and DPS did was they put it in the shallow part of the river where a woman drowned trying to save her daughter and her other child died. How much is too much?
That's a tragedy.
Tragedy. Is that the right kind of immigration policy in your mind?
You what?
Is that a right kind of immigration policy in your mind?
I think you've heard me say, I'm not sure we found the magic mix, but it is a deterrent from people entering illegally. So it is part of the infrastructure piece of that three-legged conversation.
Yeah. People dying along the river, being drowned because of that. Razor wire on the border. It's interesting about that razor wire, another tool in the toolbox. When was the last time you went down to the border?
It's been a few years, actually. I've been down there 3 times, but I can tell you I haven't been down there late.
Have you seen the border buoys in Eagle Pass in my district?
Just pictures on the TV and whatever testimony.
So you got the buoys in the shallow water that kick the migrants out to the deeper water where many have drowned. How much is too much? But then you've got this razor wire, and it's leading them down this clearing along the Texas border. Do you believe that people are tribal?
It's human nature to assemble.
Human nature to assemble.
Hopefully it continues. That's a good trait.
You believe police are tribal? Law enforcement, different entities are tribal?
Yeah. So, sure, I think we're a tribe, if you want to call it a tribe, of people that have like minds most of the time, not all the time. This is one of those days, and it's unfortunate.
Oh, that's right.
This is not what I or nor any of my colleagues want to need or have to do, but we have no options to do what we believe is the best course to try to save, but public safety first. You know, your examples are tragic. Nobody wants to see innocent people's lives lost. But I'll remind you, there is legal entry. There is ports of entry where they can come across legally and have the conversation they seek about coming into this country. I'll also remind you that they traveled many, many miles, risking their lives with their kids' lives, but long before the buoy. And they also chose to do that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So,
Cops are tribal, right? Yes, sir?
you know, I know where you're going, I think, but it doesn't matter where you're going. People, fortunately, but it's not becoming, we're losing this. People like to be around people, and they like communication, and they like that. So absolutely, if your definition of a tribal, if your definition is people assembling with like-minded goals normally or a mission, then yeah, anybody. I could tell you my CPA firm with 15 employees is, quote, a tribe in the CPA office that I serve, because if you tribal is, we get along and like to be around each other. I don't know what your definition of tribal is, but I wish you'd just get to your point. What's the question?
Hey, I'm glad you know where I'm going. Sometimes I don't know where I'm going.
I'm just asking, what's the question with Senate Bill 4 specifically?
All right, fair enough. I'd rather sit here and commune with you and talk about water, but we're not doing
I had
that.
to.
But here we are. Since you haven't been down the border, what that happens is once they make it to the Texas side of that water, what they do is they walk down to a clearing. And at that clearing, you've got the tribal cops, federal cops and the state cops. And the federal cops say, go over there. Go talk to those people. And those people are the DPS troopers. And those people, Senator Blanco, happens in your community too. Senator Hinojosa, happens in your community. And those people are on the private property side. Oh, hell, all of a sudden, you're criminal trespassing. All these people wanted to do was to walk to the port of entry to say, auxilio político, I'm here to claim asylum. But your bill doesn't allow that, does it?
If they come across the bridge, it allows it, because there's a process to claim asylum coming over that bridge. That's a legal port of entry. Your example there, if I was upset with anybody, if the federal government is directing them across to a path that will get them a state felony or a state crime and trespassing, that's not the state. The state's just doing what we asked them to do. The feds direct them there. If they want to not have that, they can set their shop as a federal somewhere else. But the fact that they chose not to come into this country legally over a port of entry that everybody recognizes is where you claim your asylum status over before you come over now, and then continue the process once you land.
I'm just saying the people are tribal. Cops are tribal.
Well, we can go that narrative. It has no purpose. Senate Bill 4.
It's not a narrative. You have lots of narratives. Everything that you say, you have some narrative. You don't believe that people get pulled over for broken taillights. According to you, it doesn't happen. That's what you said. It does not happen. I wish you were black and I wish you were brown so you would know that it happens, sir.
I hear you.
It happens.
Same argument.
What have I said? What have I said? What did I say? How did I insult the man? Did I insult you, sir?
So you're right to your own opinion. I just have more faith and trust in the people that wear the badge and the gun. That one or two incidents that you have had over the last 100 years of civil rights conversation, it may happen. But I will tell you, when it happens, we have processes in place to prosecute the cop that did it. And if those don't work, and I know that everybody in your world is bad and that there is no rules and laws that apply to the guys with the badge and the gun, that's fundamentally false. It's not true. I know a lot of good people that enforce civil rights to the letter every day diligently. If one got out of the box, we have a remedy for it. So if we want to go there, you're just basically going to say everybody with badge and gun is bad.
Your bill doesn't allow for civil rights, sir.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't allow for
the bill is not.
Does your bill allow for a defense against the Convention Against Torture?
This bill changes nothing regarding civil rights or due process or probable cause or suspicion.
Does your bill allow for an affirmative defense for a Convention Against Torture claim under the United Nations? Yes or no?
What is the current law today?
Federal law allows someone to go out to a border agent of any sort and say, I want asylum, or I have a claim because I've been tortured in my current country. Is there such a claim, an affirmative defense in this bill? Yes or no?
If you come across legally on the port of entry, the feds can have that conversation. I'm creating 2 state offenses to defend what the public of Texas and this country is facing if we don't do our job.
But there is no abatement in this bill.
We're not changing any of the federal law.
Sure you are.
We are not.
Sure you are.
We are not.
Because if you come into this country, no matter whether you came in between the border or at the border, you get to claim political asylum. Yes or no?
My understanding is political asylum is granted from your home country before you leave, and when you get over here, you can claim asylum and start your own process if that was not availed to you.
Your understanding is false.
Okay, it's flawed, possibly. I'm not
flawed.
an immigration agent, and this bill doesn't touch that.
It's false.
What I'm telling you is
to claim
process.
Within 1 year in the United States, you're allowed to claim political asylum. Are you aware of that?
The bill says it has to be granted.
Precisely. And so therefore your bill doesn't allow anybody to be able to make a claim for political asylum. It just jails them.
It potentially gives them an opportunity to have that conversation at the magistrate level before they're jailed. If they meet that, it is exempted. In this bill, it is exempted for someone that proves they are a candidate for asylum. And
then what happens, sir? Does the
I'm assuming
magistrate call The local immigration judge, do they call ICE under your bill?
There is no arrest if you meet the qualifications of asylum underneath the federal law today. It did not change that process.
Under your bill, who's going to interview them to see if they have asylum? I'm just asking questions, sir.
I'm telling you as a practical matter, when they go before that magistrate, if that's a legitimate argument and a defense that can be available to them, they will have counsel. They will have resources to explain to the judge or the magistrate at the time that this is something I am claiming as an affirmative offense that is allowed under this bill, that then will be followed through by whatever process there to go and have that person get into the asylum world.
So you're telling me right now that your bill is going to give them a court-appointed lawyer from, because I don't see that in the bill, a court-appointed lawyer from the time they reach the magistrate's office to determine whether they have a claim for asylum or the Convention Against Torture or a possible 42B claim. I know you don't know what that means, but you're going to give them a court-appointed immigration lawyer.
At the magistrate level, they will have interpreters, and if they asked for an attorney, although those cases are currently being litigated, it is potential they could have counsel there. But it will be at the judge level where the counsel will be provided under any due process.
Okay, I'm just wondering. So you're telling me two different things because it's not in the bill. So you're okay with them having immigration counsel. We can have an amendment that appoints immigration counsel to them. That's what you're selling us right now.
Defense of asylum seekers is provided in the bill. The process in which that ensues, I am not going to tell you. I can give you the fine detail of how that works, but it will be available because it is an affirmative defense in it, and whatever process that establishes that person's legitimate claim to asylum will be engaged.
Do these people get a court-appointed lawyer? Yes or no?
No, not automatically. Not as a magistrate level.
Okay.
At the magistrate level, I've had conversations that it does or does not. At the magistrate level. It's kind of a mixed. I'm told that
fabulous.
It does or
Hey, listen, that's the first time I hear that. I'm sure we're all surprised to hear that everybody gets a lawyer at the magistrate lawyer.
It's available at the magistrate level.
Staff, if you're listening, draft that amendment right now.
So it's available, but not automatic, is what the Office of Court Administration has told me.
Okay. Are you going to allow them to have an immigration lawyer court appointed to them at the magistrate level in this bill? Yes or no?
It's currently not changing any of the processes at the federal level.
No, that wasn't my question, sir. I asked a very simple question.
If the process to establish a legitimate asylum-seeking individual allows for that, it didn't change that.
Okay. Well, it doesn't.
Okay. Well,
under this bill or it doesn't. So I'm asking you to answer this question because you're telling me two different answers. Will someone
I'm really not.
I don't want to speak over you, sir.
I hear you.
I'm simply asking the questions. I know you want to get chippy with me and try to insult me. I'm just asking the questions here. And you can answer the questions, and I don't want to speak over you. My question is simple. Will people be allowed an immigration lawyer at the time that they approach the magistrate? Yes or no?
So, line 21, actually line 19, it is an affirmative defense to prosecution under this section that, 1, the federal government has granted the defendant A, a lawful resident in the United States, or B, an asylum under 8 U.S.C. Section 1158. 2, the defendant's conduct does not constitute a violation of 8 U.S.C. Section 1325, or the defendant was approved for benefits under the Federal DACA Act between those deadlines that had that brief, weird exemption period, and a couple of others.
I appreciate that.
I did not change how an individual would claim asylum nor be granted asylum in this bill. So if your question is, am I going to require an attorney for this purpose, I will follow whatever the process is currently being followed. At the magistrate level, you can, but not required, to provide counsel. This bill does not provide counsel at the magistrate level.
Okay. Now we're getting to the answers.
It doesn't.
Okay.
But it didn't change what the federal process of claiming asylum is either. So if they do, they still have that right.
Well, that's not entirely true because your bill also says they cannot get an abatement on their claim if they have an asylum claim. And it doesn't mention anything about Convention Against Torture claims, does it?
No, it does not, but it doesn't change the existing law. So
It doesn't
federal law
mention-
has it in there?
It doesn't
didn't change
mention, it doesn't mention anything about a 42B claim is. Let me explain to you what a 42B claim is. To Senator Hinojosa's point, and I'm not as eloquent as Senator Hinojosa. And I apologize to you if you think I'm being aggressive here.
You're not. I mean, it's legitimate policy conversation. I can only
Yeah.
tell you, we did not change federal
A
law.
42B claim, Senator, is a claim when someone is arrested in Dallas or Houston or San Antonio, or for that matter, Eagle Pass or McAllen, Texas. And they've been here for more than 10 years. For more than 10 years. And they have a U.S. citizen child or a U.S. citizen wife, but they came in undocumented, but they've been here. They didn't get caught by anybody. They're just living in the shadows. When I, as an immigration lawyer, go to defend that person, Senator Perry, I get to go over there and I say, Judge, this person has a 42B claim. I have cancellation of removal. And I have to prove that. I have to prove the continuous presence uninterrupted for 10 years. I have to prove that there's been no crime. And I have to prove that there is a substantial U.S. contact, a child or a wife. And so when I do that, I get relief. My client gets a bond. Down the road, I'm allowed to process that claim one way or another. There's no affirmative defense for that in this bill, correct?
Not an affirmative specific to Section 42B. But again, I do not change any defense availed through Section 42B, our federal process of handling immigrants.
So then you will not have any problem putting an affirmative defense amendment for 42B or a Convention Against Torture claim, correct?
I would have to do some research before I could tell you yes or no. I did not change any federal processes. And that would be a defense that ultimately the courts would avail.
But you do change federal processes, because when a person gets arrested by a federal officer, they first sit down for an interview and they get a question. Are you asking for asylum? They say, okay, let's talk about it. And the person says, auxilio político. Right, Senator Hinojosa? That's what they say. And then they get interviewed for something called a credible fear interview. That's allowed under federal law in the first year, wherever you are, in Dallas or Houston or wherever. And in that scenario, the court determines, or an immigration officer determines if they have a credible fear of returning home. But that's not in here. There's no officer. There's just the local cop from wherever, border town or Dallas or Houston. He grabs this person. And I also have the same concerns that Senator Hinojosa has about driving while black and driving while brown, because we've seen that in this state. And I'm sorry, and I apologize to you if I would have insulted you by saying you're not black and you're not brown. I apologize to you. But these are real things that our community deals with, that we deal with. And so when we see bills like this, it is of particular concern. I think that this bill is going to be challenged for many, many constitutional imperfections. But let's go on. You and I can both agree on one thing. Our immigration system in this country is broken. Yes?
I will agree 100% that it's broke.
This president didn't break it, right?
It's been broke for decades.
The last president didn't break it, right?
Been broke for decades.
Matter of fact, of the last three presidents, the one that deported the most was President Obama.
It's been broke for decades.
That's right. And the United States Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, have failed to fix this, correct?
100%.
We can agree on that. Words are important, and what we say matters. And when you say that the last president's Remain in Mexico policy was effective, I have to tell you what that policy did. And I know that this bill is new to you, and I'm not suggesting you don't know all of these issues, because I know that you do, and you're a very smart man, and I respect you greatly. Donald Trump utilized something called Title 42, which was a health and safety protocol based on COVID. You're aware of that?
Correct.
The Remain in Mexico policy. Last May, this president instituted Title 8. Title 8 is our current immigration law enforcement policy. That's a law enforcement policy, correct?
Correct.
Would it surprise you to know, because words are important, and the words that Fox News and everybody uses are often, I find it often intriguing, catch and release. I hear that so much. What does that mean to you?
So you've raised a conversation with another senator and you've taken it out of context.
Okay. What does catch and release mean to you?
Catch and release is the term used for identifying an illegal, having a conversation, and then putting them into a system that basically says come back on your own recognizance with a bond is kind of the practical application of the way I understand it. That there actually are put in a system for processing. They're being processed, but they're also released in hopes that they'll show back up to a court somewhere in the future.
The vast majority of migrants.
I can't tell you what the demographics are. You asked me what I believe catch and release was. That's what I believe it is.
When Republicans or people on TV like to say catch and release, those are migrants that have been processed, that have gotten credible fear, and have been released for a future asylum date. Both Senator Blanco and Senator Hinojosa and Zaffarini, if she's been in her office, I think, all of us look at these numbers just about every day, I would imagine. The vast majority of migrants get deported every day.
That's correct.
And when we hear, because words are important, Fox News say catch and release, those are migrants. The same migrants, by the way, that one of the tools in the toolbox, Senator Huffman, of our governor, who has spent $100 million sending migrants up to Chicago and New York and everywhere else, those are processed migrants that are actually within 90 to 120 days away from getting a work permit. Did you know that?
Catch and release, according to your question, is what does that mean? We put people in a process and says, we will release you on your own recognizance until you show back up at an appointed court date. Now, I haven't got the statistics, and I should have, but what I'm told, there is an extremely large amount of noncompliance as far as showing back up. Now, we can argue that, but I don't have the data to support that. I've just have heard it. I haven't statistically proved it, so I won't use that. But the problem with the, quote, connotation, as you want to frame it at catch and release, is we are literally not following through up on our current immigration system. But back to the conversation that you're using against me with the Remain in Mexico policy. That was in the context that every time there's been a deterrent of something established, be it this administration, last 3 administrations, or even a state deterrent, that it seems to have an impact on the flow. So it wasn't a comment about a specific policy as much as we have to find deterrents to discourage people from coming into this country illegally.
Oh, you're right.
That context.
You're right.
Not the policy itself, because as you point out, and I agree 100%, both sides have failed miserably. And I would argue, well, I won't even say it because it would be kind of an irrelevant but political statement, that I don't know what we'd have conversations about in primary campaigns sometime on both sides. I mean, it's gotten out of hand. But that said, this is real life, real people, real impacts. I have empathy and compassion and sympathy for those that are seeking a new and better way. But unfortunately, we can't tell who those are by the fact that they walk across the bridge or walk across this river that we're trying to patrol, at the risk of letting the one guy that didn't have that motive go in and do something horrible. So this is what the bill is about, is public safety, about people that we feel, I believe, and everybody would agree, we don't have control of, the bad guys today. That's all this bill does.
Let's put the Remain in Mexico policy to bed, and that it didn't work. And it didn't work because it actually allowed people to come in, let me finish, with impunity into this country without tagging them. Under Title 8, a migrant is arrested. You notice I don't call them aliens, by the way. A migrant is arrested, okay? And they are tagged, and they are processed, and they are fingerprinted. Upon illegal reentry, they actually spend more time in prison under federal law than they do under your law, under your proposed law. But, let me finish. Under that Remain in Mexico policy, men and women crossed with impunity, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, without ever being tagged, because Title 8 was being adjudicated, and even our Attorney General, even Ken Paxton, fought against the re-implementation of Title 8. And Title 8 was actually the policy that tagged people and allowed us to get the next step on the re-entry. Under Title 42, we were more dangerous than we are now. You're not suggesting in your colloquy earlier that 2,700 pounds of fentanyl came in on the backs of people coming over here looking for a dream, are you?
No, correct. 27,000 pounds.
27,000.
I wish it was 2,700. 27,000 pounds.
Didn't come in on the backs of some migrant looking for a dream, right?
I don't know how far the cartel has gone, and innocent people being mules under the threat of killing their relatives, I'm told, is the scenario, but it doesn't matter how it came in. The fact that it came in is the issue of the day.
That's right. So you're not in any way related to somebody that builds homes by a company called Perry Homes, right?
Not relevant, but no, sir, I'm not.
And you're not related?
No, I'm not, but it's not relevant.
Well, it is relevant.
It is not relevant. If you're going to the workforce that they're filling, absolutely. We are dependent upon a migrant workforce. There is no doubt. But that does not excuse the illegal entry to this country to fill that void. And honestly, you raise a good point, and I've made this point before. If we didn't have it, I don't know what our industry groups would look like, but I can't ignore the rule of law for the name of industry economics. But no, I'm not related.
And that's my point. Your bill, if somebody's working for Perry Homes, some subcontractor putting a roof on in San Antonio, Dallas, or Houston, or wherever that is, has migrant laborers working out there, and they've been here for 10 or 20 years, this bill applies to them too.
There'd have to be probable cause to have that conversation. And if I'm not mistaken, in Lubbock, Texas, my framing crews, a lot of times, immigration fairly shows up on those sites and has the same impact that you're speaking to today. So it's not this bill that created the opportunity to do that thing. The feds are already doing that thing. And as bad and as much as I want those people to have incomes and jobs and livelihood and opportunity, you cannot overlook the other part of the folks coming through with them on the border.
This bill, and I know what you like to say, you'd like to suggest that you need probable cause, but the fact is, your bill is specific to migrants. And it doesn't say anything about, I'm trying to find this probable cause piece in here, and maybe you can direct me.
We didn't change probable cause rules. They're still in existence. I didn't change anything in the criminal code, other code, civil liberties code. It's exactly the same. Probable cause is administered the same outside of this bill as it did before this bill.
Well, direct me where the section of the bill where the officer, what the elements are to establish the probable cause.
I didn't change the rules of probable cause. Whatever the rules are today before this bill will be the rules after this bill. Nothing got changed.
You would agree with me first. You have to first have the reasonable suspicion to think that someone is committing a crime, correct?
My basic understanding of probable cause.
Okay, so where in your bill does it suggest what the elements of that reasonable suspicion? Is it just being brown?
The elements are already defined in our penal code and other legal systems, and I didn't touch those, change those, nor would I ever envision changing those.
So then how does a police officer...
Question's been asked and answered. I did not change the penal code, the criminal, the due process, or the probable cause. This bill does not address it because it's already in the code and I did not change it. Asked and answered. Move on to the next question, please.
Well, we're not in a court here. I mean...
Well, we are in the sense of the way you keep badgering over the same issue, and you're going to get the same answer.
I want to know how...
existing law.
I want to know how a cop knows that some Hispanic person is a migrant. Or in your case, an alien, I'm sorry.
Today, whatever that process is that cop would employ or not, using his discretion or not, within the confines of a civil liberty system that I did not touch, did not change under this bill. Did not. So if a cop today can ask those questions, he can ask them tomorrow. If he can't ask those questions, he can't ask them tomorrow. I did not change that world.
Here's my point, Senator Perry. You're creating a crime here. Okay?
Illegal entry.
Senator Hinojosa, if I'm driving down the road and I'm going back and forth erratically on that road, then that police officer could stop me for reasonable suspicion of a crime, of DWI. And then he can formulate, after interviewing me, whether there is probable cause to arrest me for the arrest of DWI. And so if I'm putting a roof on in Dallas and I'm a cop and I'm driving by and I see this home being built and there's a whole lot of brown faces that look like me and look like him putting up this roof, what's the reasonable suspicion for him? Because there is no precursor here. There is no something that says, oh, he was driving erratically. And then later I found out he was also a Mexican. So I want to know what the elements are that allow a cop to determine.
Senator Gutierrez, your question is indignant and doesn't even justify a response.
It's not indignant.
It is, and it is indignant to the police association and the people that wear that badge, because for you to infer that someone's going to drive by a roofing contractor and look up there and say, there's brown people on the roof, by gosh, they must be illegal, I'm going to go arrest them, is absurd and disrespectful and should not be a conversation. Mr. President,
sir.
This line of questioning is not relevant to the SB4.
It absolutely is.
It absolutely is not, because you're trying to interject a hypothetical that if it were to occur, and sadly it may have, those officers will be sued under the Civil Liberties Act.
No, sir.
Yes, sir, they will, because they have to show probable cause to have the conversation with the guy on the roof.
Probable cause for what? That's my question.
The question of the day is, if I'm roofing, did I commit a crime from a vision of a cop looking up? And the answer is, I don't think so. And if the cop says
certainly
so, he better have a reason to. So the bottom, yeah, it is. You just described a situation where you got people on top of the roof that happen to be brown in color that are roofing a deal, and an officer has to have, what would his suspicion or reasonable cause be to go and have a conversation with that?
Maybe you're not understanding what I'm suggesting here.
Your questions are not relevant, and they don't make sense.
They are
not
relevant,
understanding,
sir.
Because you literally are off your page.
They are relevant, sir.
I like you. I respect you.
I like you too, and I respect
think you're
you
smart
too.
mind. But here's what I'm saying to you: for you to live in this world where everybody with authority is bad because you may not agree with my skin color is just wrong.
Members, let the question be asked. Let the author answer. Stick to the contents of the bill. Senator Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think, first off, let's be really clear. I like you a lot, and I respect you a lot. But this is a new crime. And when I'm driving down the road and I'm drunk or driving erratically, the cop gets to pull me over for driving erratically. Then he gets to formulate probable cause. You're creating a new crime for illegal entry into this country. Now, I can understand, sir, if you see someone walking across the water, and there they go, and they're on the Texas side, reasonable suspicion for this new crime.
But what I tried to ask the previous author of this bill, and he couldn't answer this before, is if I'm in Houston, Texas, or if I'm in Dallas, Texas, or San Antonio, Texas, this is a new crime. There's nothing in here that says that cop first has to have reasonable suspicion that I did something else. It's just the crime of illegal entry. And so I'm trying to figure out what are the elements, the evidence, if you will, that a cop could formulate to have reasonable suspicion. I understand walking across the water, but can he stop and ask you specifically, show me your papers, if you're working on a rooftop in Austin, Texas?
I'll address it a couple of ways. And you rephrased it, but it's the same premise. First of all, the only ones that get to walk up to you on a roof in Dallas, Texas, your immigration status would be a federal immigration officer, is basically my understanding. If a cop, a law enforcement, municipal, sheriff, or other reason walked up and asked that question, I think they're going to get in a lot of trouble based on existing law. But to your point, if a person interior to the border, if you don't see them physically cross the water, which is reasonable suspicion, which does establish probable cause to take them in, but outside of the interior, into the interior of the state, if one of those persons are actually confess to being here illegally, or in the event of another crime, as your example, DWI, that's when that person would have this conversation. But just to wholesale assume that we've thrown away due process, civil liberties, and those functions that we all know are what are practicing today under the premise that this bill is going to change that is just flagrantly false and misinformation. And if I have led you differently, I have completely misspoke. But we didn't change that. I don't think you're going to see officers randomly having a conversation about immigration status that's not part of an additional crime, unless someone walks up and says, "Hey, officer, I need to tell you, I've committed a state jail crime now of being here illegally, and I want to confess that to you." I don't think that's going to happen. If it does, that's reasonable cause or suspicion. But to your scenario, this random conversation about what your immigration status is because I don't like the way you look, I think there's protections for those people, and I think the officers have severe penalties for that.
What penalties if you've committed a new crime that allows them? There's no definition as to reasonable suspicion in this bill, sir.
Reasonable suspicion is a legal theory, a legal crime, legal definition that's been out there. I mean, most people in the legal community and crime community know what reasonable suspicion is. You knew what it was. You said reasonable suspicion would be, I saw someone come across the water. How did you know that was reasonable suspicion? Because you know what the standard is.
And that's why I'm asking you. You're telling me.
I'm telling you, an officer's not going to have this conversation without another crime. Asked and answered. I don't know how to address it. We didn't change reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and how an officer operates in that world. I know you want me to say we changed it. We didn't change that.
But you did, sir.
We didn't, but that's okay. Difference of opinion, that's why we have debates.
So we don't deport anybody in your bill? We just return them?
We don't deport anybody, Bill. We take them to the border and send them back on their way. We don't touch the border. We let them off at the front or at the base of the bridge.
And if they don't go, then what?
Then they have committed another felony under the bill or another offense, and it will become a second-degree felony, I believe, on that offense.
They just stand there and protest.
Stand there and protest and don't comply with the order to go back to your home. They have committed another felony if they're on this side of the bridge and don't comply with the order. That was the questioning that Senator Huffman had.
Have any other states enacted the crime of illegal entry?
I'm not aware what other states are.
Where did this idea come from?
I think many minds of many days trying to figure out how to address the public safety concerns of the state because of this porous border, letting people such as the terrorists, the human traffickers, the cartel, this is an idea. It's time to try different things, because just spending more money is not all of the answer. It's part of an answer, but we've got to do something different, or at least add another component to the toolbox.
We spent a lot of money in this state.
$12 billion after this bill today,
That's a hell of a lot of money.
plus the soft costs that we don't track.
Well, there's also the tremendous billions of dollars worth of benefit that those workers on those roofs contribute to our U.S.
No
economy.
doubt they don't. They do contribute.
That's
But
right.
that's no excuse to allow illegal entry or ignorance of the law.
Is this in response to a national emergency or recent events, would you say?
Well, I would call a national emergency. I can literally tell you that 169 people on a terrorist watch list is a national emergency. I can tell you 27,000 fentanyl that kills an average of 5 Texans a day is a national crisis.
I assure you that, nobody wants to hear what I have to say, but I can fix all of this problem. You want to have that discussion, we can go outside and we can have this. I can tell you how to have a comprehensive immigration reform plan that works. But that's not what we're doing. We're talking about your bill today.
Right.
So do you agree with the following statement that undocumented workers have severely depressed farm wages?
It's not part of the bill. It's not relevant. I think Barbara Jordan made that argument back decades ago.
No, I don't think she did.
I think she did. I think she said that the people that are going to suffer are the people that are internal to this state that are legal citizens are going to have cheap wage labor come in and compete for those. But that's a different conversation, not part of SB4.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll look into that Barbara Jordan reference and I'll get back to you. Do you agree with the death and disease rates in areas of high concentration of undocumented workers assume more of the care?
Senator, please keep your comments and questions to the contents of Senate Bill 4.
I'm just asking them some questions about
Please
migrants.
confine your comments to Senate Bill 4.
You do not reference any affirmative defense to Convention Against Torture claims or 42B claims, correct?
Not specifically an affirmative defense mentioned inside of the bill, referenced into the bill.
I have no further questions.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Senator.